Good afternoon, everybody. This is the meeting of the Municipal Waste Management Plan Advisory Committee, June 2nd. And thanks everybody for coming. We are not a large group yet today, but let's go ahead and put our name and affiliation in the chat. If you're on one of the advisory committees, either the Sustainability Commission Zero Waste Committee or the Resources and Waste Committee, or if you're on the 10-year official advisory committee, just go ahead and put your name, affiliation, and what committee you are in the chat. And we'll sort of get going. Why don't I go ahead and share the screen, and we'll go through the agenda and just double check and see if we have any changes or updates. All right, so we are going to review the workshop 2. Thank you everybody for participating in that. I think it was very fruitful discussions. Then we're going to move into the plan elements, and we've provided you with an outline, and we're going to continue our discussion of the section, the zero waste initiatives, and then some of the other sections that require our attention. We're going to talk about workshop 3, and then I think it would also be appropriate for us to think about what our next meeting schedule is. So we're next scheduled to meet up on August 2nd. That's to give us enough time to put the draft plan together, but we might also want to schedule a check-in meeting at one point. All right. Well, we'll move on then to a recap of workshop number 2. And Amy, are you prepared to kind of go over the status report on the updates to the guiding principles?
Yes, I can do that. You want me to do that now?
Yeah, do you want to share your screen?
Sure, hold on. I always have trouble finding the right document. Hold on one second. I teed it up.
Are you seeing it? Are you seeing it right now?
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, and it wasn't letting me share screen. So perfect.
All right.
So at the last at the public meeting last week, the public workshop last week, we one of the things we did was go over the zero waste guiding principles. And we got some feedback that led to, well, actually, so I don't know that you've seen this since our last meeting together. So after our last meeting, we took another shot at the guiding principles and made some revisions to them based on your feedback. And then we brought that to the meeting last week, the public workshop last week. And we got a lot of support for them. But as a result, we made 2 changes. So I can just walk through what we've got. So we've got center environmental justice by keeping pollution out of overburdened communities, protect public health and the environment by reducing discharges to air, water, and land, reduce waste by enacting policies, providing technical assistance and education, and developing partnerships with county municipalities, businesses, residents, and institutions. And this had been worded a little bit differently before the workshop, but based on some feedback we got just during the conversation about the need for partnerships and on some of the listening sessions we did, particularly with the schools, about how we could be developing partnerships that will help them move forward with their efforts. We did a little word tweaking on this one. Foster a zero waste culture through education and programs that reinforce the concept of zero waste. Strengthen the zero waste jobs in the local economy by supporting existing and local zero waste businesses and attracting new ones and spurring innovation. Improve transparency and communication and accountability between all parties as it relates to actions, roles, impacts, and costs. Support municipalities by providing more consolidated county-level zero waste resources and services. Hold producers of waste responsible. And then the last thing we added also as a result of the public meeting last week was use science to decide decision-making about zero waste. That was expressed pretty strongly. So that's where we are. And if you have any thoughts on this, we hope that this reflects the feedback you gave us at the last meeting. Ruth, I don't know how much time we have to discuss it, but
let's open it up and see if folks are prepared to say, to either add in more comments or say we're good to go.
Right. And I think, I know we've got the chat, but I think it might be helpful just for flow if people want to just unmute themselves and speak up, that's fine.
This is Chuck Lacey. You know, at some point, there's going to need to be some significant public investment. The transfer stations, as Jim McLaughlin has explained, and as Jim Warner have explained, are really a disaster. There's been just a history of non-investment. And I think the reconstruction of the transfer stations, including, waste sorting and that kind of stuff, there's just going to need to be some public investment to achieve this. And I think we need to have enough members of the public advocating for that investment. And I don't know whether that advocacy fits in here somewhere, but clearly there's going to need to be some investment.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. I just spent an hour and a half with our financial advisors and engineers and so forth. And what Chuck is saying is correct, not just the transfer stations, but if we're going to be moving, which is absolutely necessary to shift waste, but we have to build our landfill too. So the public, we're already modeling a significant amount of debt. I'll throw out 50 million just for two transfer stations and phase 2 of the landfill. We're looking at about 29 million for phase 2 of the landfill plus capping, and we're modeling about 25 million for 2 transfer stations, complete replacements that, as Chuck also said, have to provide much more service than we currently do now. Right now, our transfer stations can barely do the most simple task of just getting normal MSW dumped and loaded into trailers. That's all they do. And they only serve commercial haulers, which is the smallest segment that you could serve as a transfer station. So we do have our limits because there has not been capital investment in this system, especially here in Delaware County. So, and that's our responsibility. We get that. That's what, I have to do a lot of work on. But in all these, we also have to be, the other part of the cost is we have to be affordable. So we have to balance all of this new investment to fund the debt on the new investment, to fund the basic costs of operations, and then to fund a lot of these initiatives. And I know you haven't come up with sources of that funding and certain assumptions of that but we understand that the authority, through charging tipping fees for waste, will be funding the infrastructure and the operations that go with the infrastructure. A lot of these other things, I don't know how they're going to be funded. I'm sure there'll be some role for the authority. That most of these are not revenue generating. Most of them are educational, and some of them are operational that may have their separate fees associated with the separation and/or processing of waste that will not that will be recoverable, recyclable. So we get all that. I guess to end, I just don't see that reflected in here.
So let's stick on this point then for a moment about investments, because that could be a guiding principle to invest in critical zero waste infrastructure, by identifying appropriate sources of funding, or something like that. And what do people think? I think that's a really interesting point you're both bringing up. So how would that fit into a guiding principle?
I'd like to say a little more than Jim can say in his role as just someone from the public who has looked at this. The financial situation of the Solid Waste Authority is a disaster. The county withdrew from its financial role in 2009. Since then, the Solid Waste Authority has lost about $50 million, losing like $4 million a year. And basically what it has done it has subsidized the disposal costs for consumers in Delaware County who are used to paying not very much. So the consumers now have had the benefit of absorbing all of the assets of the Solid Waste Authority in the form of reduced fees for the last 13 years. And there is a Solid Waste Authority that, even if there was no zero waste initiative, would require a lot of public investment. So the dilemma, the political dilemma here, is that the investment, the risk is that the public will see future investment in the Solid Waste Authority as being triggered by the zero waste initiative, when even if there was no zero waste initiative, there would a large public investment would be necessary, more than the Solid Waste Authority can really pay back on its own.
And let me jump in here real quick, because I'm at both the policy level and the operational level. I have a very unique position in this. There is no doubt that the authority is struggling financially, but we are where we are, and it wouldn't matter whether the authority was flush with cash. We still need to find revenue to support these various initiatives. It wouldn't matter if we had all the money in the world. Most of that, well, we don't, first of all, and we probably would not have more than we needed to conduct our operations. We are not obligated to maintain a balance that's more than what it costs to close our landfill and to sustain our operations. So I would not expect that the authority would ever have added revenues to cover additional initiatives. It wouldn't matter, even if we weren't in the state that we're in, we still probably wouldn't have the funds to do this. So we always need to find alternative revenues and resources to go after these initiatives. So, we can talk all we want about the state of the authority. It's irrelevant. That what's relevant is that, and I agree completely with Amy on this, actually, that we need to identify a guiding principle that says we're going to look for appropriate revenue sources to address all of these different needs. And as part and parcel of incorporating them into the plan, we need to talk about seriously where the revenue will come from, where the resources will come from to address all of them. They're all wonderful initiatives. I'm very much in support of them. However, as they say, without funding, this is all a hallucination.
Can I add something?
Sure. Yeah.
So it isn't just all about the authority. Granted, the authority plays a huge role in this. And so these principles are based upon what we want to see collectively. So although definitely putting in resources should be incorporated, obviously is very realistic, I think we have to think outside the box, not that this plan is about retrofitting the authority. It's about retrofitting the community function and those things that we need to be responsible for both within and outside the authority. So I just think that needs to be clear.
I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This is a county program, not just an authority program. I completely agree.
Just a minute, Chuck and Mike, just before we kind of launch into discussion on this, Amy, do you think you could, while we're talking on other stuff, kind of craft a guiding principle kind of language with regards to the gist of what we're getting at, which is we probably do need another initiative that it talks about, funding and financing or investment. But I really agree that we should not get wound up in the current discussion about the authority. The authority is working on their stuff. They are obligated. The county, the municipalities will all be in support in terms of, the authority doesn't invent money. They get money from the users of the facilities. So,
here's my thought. I think that's right. I think we don't want to get bogged down in the authority issues, but I think that funding is an important thing. So here would be my suggestion, modifying yours just a little bit, is if people have some thoughts on this or wording that would be appropriate for a guiding principle, maybe while we're continuing the conversation, use the next 5 minutes to put that in the chat. And when we're done with the guiding principles conversation, I'll work on something and come back to a little bit later in the meeting with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go to Mike and then Joy, and then let's kind of wrap up the funding initiative, guiding principle, and see if there are any other discussion on guiding principles. So Mike?
Yeah, I would recommend that any principle that is around having a county commitment of resources to this, which surely is needed, include the concept of making Chester whole. Because not only has Chester been cheated out of about $12 million of host fees by the authority giving a discount or having negotiated a discount and paying $2 instead of $5 a ton for several years now. But if that money goes away, or rather when it goes away, because Delaware County will stop using the incinerator, the city that's already on the brink of bankruptcy is going to be hurting even more. And given that there's been 30 years of abusing Chester health-wise for the sake of many people, including the county's waste, I think that kind of paying back the dues to Chester is appropriate and needs to be factored in somehow.
Great.
Do folks have a reaction to that, or should we ask Amy to incorporate that concept into her guiding principle? Does anybody have a concern about that before we go to Joy? Yeah, Joan.
Yeah, let me.
We're going to go to Joan, James. Jim, we're going to Joan first.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I was actually trying to figure out how you would put something like that in. Maybe not just Chester, but certainly Chester. And it feels to me like what is being pointed out is the vast underinvestment in the communities in Delaware County, particularly the working class and the people who have worked really hard and gotten very little from the county. So how do you build that equity into the guiding principles around funding? So yeah, I definitely agree with Mike.
Any other discussion specifically around this issue? And we're going to give Amy the high, you she'll have to craft the language, but go ahead, Jim Warner.
Yeah, I would just, I know how Mike feels about this. I think the word cheated might be a little too strong because a negotiation is an agreement between two parties. So certainly, and this was way before my time here that happened, but obviously two sides agreed to the reduced price for whatever reason it was. So I think the word cheated is a little too strong. And the second thing is, I think, and whether it's Chester or any other municipality, where you start putting guiding principles in a document that is asking the county to make whole or reparations to a particular community. You remember, I'm not a political advisor, but this document has to be approved by the county council, and going to that's specific of a guiding principle, I think, is asking for controversy. So I would just
well, let's just see how far we get, Jim, in terms of the language. If we can't come to consensus among the advisory committee, it would have to be downplayed a little bit. But let's just see where we come with the language
out there. Yes.
Well, and let me throw something else out. So the first guiding principle says center environmental justice, and then the wording under that says by keeping pollution out of overburdened communities. The second one is protect public health and the environment by reducing discharges to air, water, and land. What we could do is in number two kind of covers number one, even though it's not specifically talking about environmental justice communities, but we could have the subpart of center environmental justice. We could change that wording a little bit to cover this concept. But yeah, I think we want to be careful to what we commit to, because, yes, the county council has to approve this, and I don't think they're going to approve something that's open-ended. So if people have thoughts on maybe approaching it that way and, tweaking number one a little bit, I put the document link in the chat. And you can always go to that document, use suggest changes mode, and make some comments directly on the document as well while we're chatting.
Amy, take a look at Jacqueline's comment in the chat, and then let's hear from Joy.
Okay.
Hi, I know you guys have been involved with other municipalities doing things, especially Austin. And I know hearing from Austin's experience, I know they were really touting the circular economy. So I was wondering where other communities have gotten their funding to do these zero waste programs.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that, but it was a little bit off topic of the guiding principles. We will be identifying, a potential funding sources and opportunities, but just give you the example of the city of Austin. Austin does have a clean community fee. Not everybody in the city of Austin is a customer to the city of Austin's collection programs. It's provided primarily to residential households, but everyone benefits from the zero waste programs in Austin. So Austin is an example of putting a clean community fee on the utility bill, which pays for zero waste programs and other things like household hazardous waste collection and dead animal collection and other things that are of a community benefit but aren't directly related to the collection system in Austin. But there are a vast array of funding options from federal and state grants, to foundations and, community partnerships, to actual tipping fee or collection rate surcharges. And we'll be identifying those funding options and opportunities for the county and in the next round as we go to the implementation stage. So anybody else on this specific initiative, guiding principle? Does anybody have any comments on the other guiding principles? Shout it out if I don't see you, because you might have your hand up and I don't see it.
Great. And I am seeing that some people are marking up the Google Doc, which is great.
Okay.
So, and Ruth, I can see everybody's hands. So if you want to put your hands up, I can see that.
I'm liking the redo of the points that you mentioned, Ruth.
Okay, that Amy mentioned?
I'm talking about the whole document.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Right.
Good. All right, well.
Right. So why don't we put your final comments in the chat, use the document, and as we move on to the next thing, I'll play around with some ideas.
And maybe we can come back to this at the end of the meeting. And this doesn't have to be the last time we discuss it.
Right.
We'll be putting some guiding, I think we have a gist of our guiding principle direction with regards to the planning process and what we would like to see in the plan, and the final wording of the guiding principles can always be adjusted at the end. But I think the purpose of this was to give direction to this process from the community to the advisory committee to the county in developing this plan. And I feel as though we've gotten, the gist of what your direction has been and what the direction of the community has been. Okay, great. So as Amy's, we're going to work on that. I'm going to go back to the agenda and just go over some other things. So the other things that we talked about with the workshop were we did go on to have some discussion of the zero waste initiatives. And we have in the Google Drive sort of some more detailed descriptions of what we mean by a lot of these zero waste initiatives. And we did spend some time in the breakout rooms discussing them in some detail. We've captured those notes and we also have those recordings. And a lot of the discussion centered around implementation strategies around them. So we did not necessarily see a lot of changes. There's maybe the direction of emphasis. Is this a high priority? Is this a low priority? Will this divert the most amount of material? And a lot of the discussion around the zero waste initiatives were about that in the breakout groups and in the in-person meeting. It was really very thoughtful discussion, a very deep discussion of these issues. So what we would intend to do based on your direction would be to move forward refining the language, putting it in a plan form, and again, thinking about how to implement. We had a discussion last time about who'd be the responsible party. Obviously some things could be asked of the authority, the county, the municipalities, and then potential community partners. So there was some very good discussion about thinking about how to leverage our entrepreneurial business community, how to incentivize them, nonprofits that are very active in the county. And so what could be the county's role or the authority's role in stimulating and spurring on support. So not everything has to be done by a county staff person or authority staff person. It can also be done by, community partners. So just wanted to pause for a minute for those of you who were able to participate in the discussion, if there were any things that came out of the discussion in terms of changes or additions. We did have one change of wording for one of the initiatives, which is the concept of pay as you throw. Pay as you throw is, different rates for sizes of containers. The more you throw away, the higher rate you pay. And in a lot of communities, we look at that as a save as you throw and look at it as if you can reduce your waste, you're going to be able to pay less. So that's just another way of how we were describing the program, but articulating it in a way that people can understand. In Delaware County, a lot of folks do not, on the residential side, don't see a garbage bill. They might pay that through their taxes, or they may, they may not see it at all. They may not know what they're paying. So, this concept of save as you throw, it could be a new concept to a lot of folks. And so they need to understand it that way. So let me just pause for a minute and just see if there were any other things that folks really wanted to bring forward out of the discussion from the workshop on the initiatives. As I say, the next step for us would be to put some meat on those bones, put those in a plan document, and then do some sequencing in terms of implementation. And we've done a little bit of noodling around on that, which I'll show you in a minute. But anything else in terms of the discussion from the workshop on the initiatives? Okay, let's move on. Just to show you all, and I don't know if you can see this. Let me try and share my screen. We did do some analysis, some preliminary analysis on potential diversion potential of the different initiatives. Can you guys see it? Amy, does that look okay? Alex, do you see my screen?
Yeah, but Ruth, if you go into slide view mode, I think it'll be bigger.
Okay. Yeah, so this, I'm just going to give you some preliminary numbers. This is based on the data that we've been collecting. Authority has provided us with the information that they get from the municipalities and report to the state. The state also does their accounting. It's somewhat mysterious, but we think we got it figured out. But essentially, based on the 2020 data, we're looking at 670,000 tons of materials going to landfill or incineration, and then about 77,000 tons that are recycled, sort of traditional recycling. And when we say traditional recycling, we're thinking, cans, bottles, paper, commercial recycling, residential recycling, but not necessarily thinking about all those auto bodies or taking down of buildings and regrinding the cement. That tends to kind of overstate what would otherwise be a normal curve of, recycling. So we're just talking about kind of traditional recycling of municipal solid waste, not necessarily that more industrial scale stuff. And then materials that are composted, that 55,000 tons, and then some other diversion that would kind of include a lot of those other things. So the total generation would be 815,000 tons. That's total generation. That means total disposal, total destructive disposal plus diversion equals generation, and the diversion rate, which is all the diversion activity over the generation rate, is 43%. So we think countywide, based on the Delaware account, based on the Pennsylvania, how we count recycling statistics, that's about where we are. If you look at it on a residential level or a commercial level, which is hard to do in Delaware County just because we don't track things that closely, We have a pretty good idea of disposal, but not so much on the recycling and diversion side, differentiating between residential and commercial. So actually one of the recommendations, this is more in the material characterization and diversion calculation initiative, is to kind of offer the next update to the plan to do more tracking if we can, so we have a better idea of how our programs are performing. Okay, so then, and then I can pause. Do you have some questions about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know what is in the other diversion.
It's things like a lot of scrap metal. That's probably the biggest piece, is scrap metal. Oops, sorry about that. And but it would also be things like some concrete recycling. Alex, do you want to talk about that a little bit? I think you've poured over that.
Municipal waste.
It potentially could include municipal waste. That's one of the problems in the way that it's tracked on the reports. But it's, the vast majority of that other number was a single cell in the non-ferrous metals. So it was primarily, the vast majority of it was metal recycling, which we assume to be institutional.
I just distributed, I think Mike just commented, and I just distributed to the board our 2020 final compilation of waste, residential and commercial waste by local government, residential and commercial recycling by local government, and then the calculations for, I think it was a 19% reduction for residential and 35 for commercial, with a weighted combined of 27 for the county. So I'll get that to you this afternoon. Okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, our data is based on your data. So whatever updates or you have, we'd be happy to incorporate. We don't want to conflict with what the state of Pennsylvania also tracks. We don't necessarily want to short ourselves in the county. If they track ferrous metals as a part of diversion, that's something that we wouldn't want to, but we could obviously make a comment about that. But we'll be happy to incorporate the data that you have. Anything else on this slide? Okay, so we'll go on. The current diversion rate is of interest, whether it's 27% or 43%, but what this plan is really about is reducing destructive disposal. It's almost immaterial how much we're actually currently recycling. We know we can do a better job of diverting more materials from destructive disposal. What's going to landfills and incinerators right now in Delaware County, we know has a lot of recyclable and compostable materials in there. So whatever is the current diversion rate, that is not necessarily what we're focusing on. We're focusing on cutting that in half or more. So here is the upshot of our preliminary analysis, assuming the 43%. So under phase one, we would look at a reduction. So from that 467,000 tons in 2020, and again, that of course number fluctuates year to year, but we would be looking at about a 60,000 ton reduction in destructive disposal under what we're calling phase one. And so we can talk about what should go in phase one, what should go in phase two, what about phase three, what are these phases? But if you start implementing the initiatives that we've been discussing, phase one, the next 3 to 5 years, might be a reduction of 60,000 tons. And then if you go to phase two, it's full implementation basically of most of those initiatives, including universal collection of recycling and composting, commercial, residential, institutional, educational. We would be looking at a reduction of about 200,000 tons. So another 200,000 tons. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. So using that number, we might get up to a 74% diversion rate. But I think the key point is we're looking to, over the 10-year period, essentially cutting our waste in half or a little bit more. Does that make sense? Okay, so then I just have a couple more slides and then we can go back to some discussion. what has the most diversion potential, and where should we be prioritizing our effort? There was a lot of discussion about this in the workshop. You know, some things that we think are really important, like bag bans, they're really important, but they don't necessarily generate a lot of diversion from landfill or incineration, right? Because they bags are not that heavy, right? There's not a lot of tons of bags, but you know, that #1 product policy initiative that includes more than just bags. It's potentially things like single-use plastics and other items. And so, you know, wanted to just show the scale and the difference between these different diversion potential. A little bit about how we estimate diversion potential for the zero waste plan is that we look at the composition of the materials that are destructively disposed. And in this case, our preliminary analysis is based on national numbers. The state of Pennsylvania is coming out with a statewide characterization study. We will use that data when it comes out to refine this. But for now, we've taken Delaware County's tonnages and applied them, residential and commercial, to the characterization that are based on national averages. And then we take that national average of composition of waste, what's going in the trash, and then we estimate based on the initiative, what is the potential capture rate of the materials. So if we're targeting, you know, food scraps in a organics collection program, what is a conservative estimate for our capture rate of those organics if we implement universal collection of food waste? Obviously, it's not 100%. And so we've done surveying and worked with a lot of communities. We have some really good data sets on what other communities are able to capture. And so for a residential program in universal collection of food scraps, that might be 35% capture or something on that order, right? And so we use these conservative estimates to understand what we could get if we implemented this program. It's important to say that none of these things can be implemented by themselves and achieve the results, right? So they kind of need to be implemented together. You can't really pick and choose the kind of a set. You know, we do need commercial technical assistance and outreach and education to support the collection programs. But so this is where we are in terms of our sort of conservative estimate of where we would get the most diversion potential of the initiatives. And I'll just show you one more slide. And this is how it kind of maps out in terms of percentages. So of the percentage of potential reduction, which is about that 54% of implementing these all at their full scale, we would be looking at, this additional amount of diversion potential. So I'm going to stop share for a minute, see if anybody had any questions on any of that or any direction to us. Yeah, please go ahead, Joy.
So right now in Haverford Township, I'm going to be trying to get my township to do the technical assistant grant from the DEP to do some of our initiatives in our climate action plan. I noticed that you have save as you throw instead of pay as you throw. And I had seen that could do a reduction of 50%, but you have it significantly less. And where some of these initiatives are, can you essentially provide your guidance other than these graphs for some of the municipalities you might be going through trying to implement before this whole process is done?
Yeah, for sure. So on the save as you throw, that's just a word change. It's not a change to how you would implement the program. It's just what we call it, right? So that's the only change that we made. And that was based on a discussion that we had in the workshop of how best to talk about this with folks. Just to point out that that save as you throw or pay as you throw initiative would only apply to the residential sector, because by and large, the commercial and institutional sector already pay as they throw, because the bigger their container, the more they pay the commercial haulers, if that makes sense. And I think the majority of, or a big chunk of what is thrown away in Delaware County comes from commercial and institutional generators, right? And so that's why it looks like on a countywide level, it looks like a lower percentage. So it may very well fall into that 50% arena if we were just looking at the residential sector. But keep in mind that I think pay as you throw might also assume that you're going to be doing a very robust recycling and potential composting program. They kind of all are of a piece. If you really want to save as you throw, you have to have somewhere to put your food scraps and your recyclable material. So you would want to do all of that together.
Yes.
To clarify, if we did save as you don't throw, are you assuming that on the residential side that is not going to take place in multifamily housing, or is that factored
in? I don't know the direct answer to your question, whether I don't think we took that into account in the commercial sector. So if the multifamily building acts like a single family building and they have, cart-based or, can-based service, that would be taken into account. Most multifamily buildings, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, already have pay as you throw, in that if they have a 2-yard bin for trash, they pay, whatever, $100 a month. And if they have a 4-yard bin for trash, they pay $200 a month. So that's the case in most commercial businesses.
Except that's not felt at the individual unit level, so it doesn't actually get the behavior reductions that are necessary. And I know other places have not, like San Francisco and Oakland, have not really succeeded at getting it working in multifamily housing. And if we can find ways to experiment with that and make it work here, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Mike, I think the first big step for that will be having the multifamily buildings as part of municipal programs, which most municipalities in Delaware County don't provide municipal service to buildings of over 8 or 11 units, or buildings that include commercial multi-use. So that's one of the barriers to that.
Thank you.
On that universal collection initiative, we'll pay special attention based on your comment to an implementation strategy for multifamily. It's a different sort of animal, compared to single family, about how you go about providing services, how you provide the outreach and education, and how to signal, waste reduction potential. You have the commons problem with multifamily, which is my neighbor could be putting out more than I do, but it's all the same garbage can or garbage bin. So, I mean, there are issues there. And I think that what we've seen in the most successful multifamily programs are just really helping everybody do the right thing, and not necessarily feeling like they are all going to get a reduction in their fee, in their rental fee. Pay as you throw is a concept that is, 20 or 30 years old. And it was really important at the beginning of recycling programs, where you really wanted people to think about these sort of things, think about how it's not free to recycle, everything costs money, but how you implement it and how you set those signals for in the commercial sector, we call it right sizing, reducing the size of your trash bin and increasing the size of your recycling and organics bin. We want everything to work out so that we're paying for our infrastructure. We need to pay for our collection infrastructure. And so, sort of the days of highly subsidizing tiny cans are over, because those tiny cans, if we all get them, we're all going to need to pay for our system. So we can have a longer discussion of pay as you throw and multifamily recycling, but we'll definitely take those comments into account as we work on our description of our initiatives and implementation strategies. Melissa, did you want to go ahead and comment?
Thank you. Just to confirm, the reductions you showed on that slide are based on tonnage, weight, not volume, right? Okay, thanks. Because sometimes I feel like I understand why tonnage is in a central sort of metric, but it's a little bit misleading, as so much of what residents throw away is getting lighter and lighter, and and plastic in particular is, excuse me, is particularly light.
We did kind of have a robust discussion about that at the workshop in terms of, you know, where's the heaviest stuff, where's the biggest bang for the buck. And, you know, we know that food being heavy is a really good target for us. And so prioritizing getting the food out of the trash and into compost has multiple benefits, you know, both in terms of reducing trash volumes and trash tonnage, but also, you know, increasing, you know, good quality soil amendment for farmers, right? So there are a lot of, and sequestering carbon. So there's like a lot of good reasons to do what we do. On the plastic side, we had a robust discussion about the fact that we might not be the first thing that we want to do when we're thinking about zero waste, just because it doesn't represent a huge component of what we're throwing away, but it's super visible. It's a blight in the community. It's a huge part of what we see in our rivers and streams and neighborhoods in terms of trash. And it, you know, and it's made from fossil fuels. So there are, again, a lot of really good reasons to target plastic, single-use plastic bags, other than their weight at the transfer station and in the incinerator or the landfill. So, okay. Any other comments or questions at this point?
I had a question about the education outreach technical assistance that looks like it has, you know, great potential there. Do you have examples of what that includes?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll be preparing a description similar to the others that are in the drive, and we can give some regional and national examples of good programs, but essentially that includes a lot, because it not only includes the outreach to the residential, which by and large, you know, happens at the local level, but it would be, you know, community-wide, county-wide, community-based social marketing, really understanding why people are doing the behavior that we don't want them to do. Everybody should know how to recycle. Everybody should want to know how to compost, but essentially community-based social marketing, outreach and technical assistance, particularly for commercial businesses, institutions, and schools. We had a listening session with several representatives from the school districts, and they're a bit lost in terms of how do they get the services, how can they do more, how can they green their you know, their classrooms and their facilities, but then also communicate education to their faculty and students. So support outreach and technical assistance to the schools, and then the faith community. We had a really good listening session with several churches and faith organizations who gave us a lot of good feedback, like, hey, here, we're where the people are, come to us, we can be a part of the solution. So I think community-based approaches, you know, outreach, technical assistance, hand-holding, someone actually going on site, helping people recycle and compost, helping them buy bins, helping them buy stickers. That's what we're seeing other programs in other schools. So not cheap, it's not a cheap program, but it really does have a lot of potential because we have a lot of infrastructure in Delaware County already for recycling, right? If everyone were actually using the infrastructure that we already have, you know, we'd be quite a longer way down the road. I mean, there's the deficit in terms of what we don't have is smaller than what we do have. We have a lot of infrastructure. So the question is, you know, how do we get people to use that infrastructure? And then of course, as we add new programs like food scrap diversion, you know, that's just another opportunity for us to both, you know, that's not an easy program to implement, as folks from media, other places will tell you, but you know, it does take a lot of effort. So
you brought up,
we'll provide you with this.
Okay. And then you brought up the recycling component, but will there be a good evaluation of what that is? Because like, as we know, things that they classify as being that are not.
Yeah, and I think we also probably need to do a little bit of myth busting, because we did, as talking to people in the workshops and the listening sessions, get a lot of feedback from people saying, well, why should we recycle? It's all getting thrown away anyway. And there are some materials that are collected that are not robustly recyclable, but some are, right? So it maybe not be the, it's really a technical issue on the part of the marketing staff at the MRF, to think about, are we going to sell our milk cartons today as milk cartons? Are we going to put it in with mixed paper, or are we going to throw them away, right? So those are decisions that they're making real time. So a question for us and for training and support to communities is, what's the best solution? Do you collect everything and try to market it, or do you try to make the materials that we're collecting and buying conform to what is robustly recycled locally? So those are some decisions and some discussions that municipalities will want to have. But I think the county role and the authority role is really kind of understanding what is marketable locally and regionally, and then assisting the municipalities in sort of standardization of materials that are collected across the county, and then educating residents and businesses on those. So that's an opportunity, I think. Okay, oops, got some hands up. Joan and then Joy.
Actually, what you just said, I don't know if you realize how important that is. What Jacqueline is talking about is a cynicism of so many people about recycling that it's really hard to get people serious about it. And I see this across the board, not just in Chester. In fact, I think there's less cynicism in Chester. There's just not enough knowledge. When I called up my people who collect my trash to find out why they collect all the plastic and not just 1 and 2, I couldn't, the person who answered is one of the trash collectors, and there's no other phone number I can talk to. So it's a serious, serious problem, and the collectors are part of it. How can we make sure that we educate everyone? And I love what you said. That has to be part of that knowledge about, okay, what does happen to the 3s and the 4s and the 7s? And why is that better than, well, I think it's better than throwing them into Covanta personally, but what does happen to them? I think when we don't know what we don't know, we get more cynical and we then stop. And right now I'm collecting everything. And I've got a basement full, because I have a huge basement. I have big baskets of bags of plastic that I have no idea where to send it. But we do need to think about this really carefully because it's a huge issue.
Great. Yeah. So we're going to count on this program being a robust program countywide and in every municipality. Okay, Joy, you want to go next? Oh, there you are.
So my question is about when I know this is kind of jumping into the implementation, but is part of this going to be a suggestion to municipalities to continue doing single stream or build the infrastructure in order to better serve, to have the multiple things? And then also for composting, I know we don't currently have the capacity to countywide go to for the food waste. And I was making sure that that is part of the implementation.
Right. So that universal recycling and composting initiative is carrying a lot of load. So in that initiative, we're talking about having countywide collection of organics, including both the yard trimmings that is already occurring in most municipalities, and then adding that food scrap component, which is what's left in the disposal, what's left in the trash. That's the biggest piece of what's left in the trash is food. So programs on food waste reduction, which we have, and also collection of food scraps are what's included there. And then in terms of single stream, so we can get into a discussion of single stream, but what we found when we've done research recently around the country and actually internationally is that really good single stream programs can achieve a lot of benefit and so it's really not about the collection system as much as it is the education program. Alex has a lot of experience with this, having implemented single stream programs and designing them for communities. And whereas, I think dual stream programs or multi-stream programs have their advantage in that you can go straight to market with some of those materials. I think that we do have a lot of single stream processing locally and regionally, and if the system is designed correctly, all the recoverable materials can be marketed appropriately. Did you want to address that at all, Alex, in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I I work with two MRFs right now that both are single stream in community controlled MRFs that have, you know, under 10% residual rate, so 90% of everything going to them is being recycled, and being recycled within 200 miles into regional markets, and all of the employees are being paid living wages, and they're full-time with benefits and even unionized. So there is the ability to do it. I think that the biggest thing is, you know, why you recycle impacts how you recycle. So if you treat recycling like a municipal service and you don't pay attention to what happens after it leaves the curb, and you leave it up to you know, another company without any accountability or transparency, you can run into these problems. But there's a lot the county can do to really ensure that we're getting over the cynicism and making sure that we have impactful programs.
Okay, so are we ready to kind of move on or move back? I think Amy is ready to tell us about her wordsmithing. Oh, Melissa, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to write this question in the chat, but you sort of opened the door a little bit when you were talking about the county taking the initiative on organics diversion. And one of the topics that came up in our work group was one that regarded this, at least what maybe feels ambiguous a bit to me, but how is the planning team thinking about the coordination of the county with the municipalities in the context of recycling, recognizing that now I think the municipalities understand the recycling for their jurisdiction is their responsibility. And I don't have a clear understanding, and maybe this needs to be hashed out, but what would be the blue sky or the ideal, I don't know, profile of how the county would work with municipalities? And given that recycling is a real challenge for municipalities right now, so what's happening right now doesn't seem to be awesome, I think, as near as I can tell. Anyway, I'll stop and mute myself.
It's a really good question, and I can tell you some things that we've been discussing, and we've just actually discussed them a little bit in the workshops as well, which is sort of regional cooperation. And we do have an examples locally of that in, I think, in Delaware County for other municipal functions, and outside the county for solid waste and recycling. So groups of cities can get together either as, you know, kind of loosely formed collaboratives, or as more structural joint powers authorities, or, you know, more functional, you know, unified districts or groups to collectively issue requests for proposals for uniform collection services. So that's one scenario, is that the county assists the municipalities. The county could take the lead and say, hey, we're going to do a request for proposals. Who's in? You know, let's see what we can get if we all band together, or by district based on the different areas of the county. And the county could perform that function, and then the individual contracts could be with the municipalities. We have a lot of examples all across the country of people working together to get the ideal solutions. I think the problem that we came across in Delaware County is that a lot of the municipalities are just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting different results. They issue the same request for bid every 2 or 5 years, get the same proposal from the same organization, and get the same services. And so obviously from our perspective, some kind of disruption needs to happen there in order to get better, more comprehensive, more you know, optimal services. And so one scenario is for having the county play a role in supporting the municipalities to collectively get services together. So that's one option. Another option that we've been talking to the authority about is, does the authority have the role in expanding its ability to either process organics, as it did at one time, or become a transfer station for organics. So we're not having to go to multiple places, but they could, have a contract with a compost facility and transfer materials to a compost facility. That's a possibility. So, I mean, those things are all in the works. I think we need to kind of have a deeper discussion of that, put out the scenarios. And I don't think that the plan is going to come to a conclusion about that, right? It's going to say, we're going to launch a program for universal composting countywide. Here are some paths that we're going to look down, but we won't be able to necessarily say this is the specific path, because we don't know. We don't know if we're going to be able to all buy into a collection system procurement. So we'll just have to see. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So then, go ahead. Sorry. So then this 10-year, this mandated 10-year update to the solid waste management plan, are you envisioning then that it encompasses all the things we've been talking about, all of those, all the zero waste initiatives, or the ones that are ultimately selected, recognizing that they do go beyond the mandate for the Solid Waste Authority? Or is the solid waste plan, the 10-year update, going to be whatever it is that the Solid Waste Authority is going to be fully responsible for? And then those other aspects, like we were talking about, that maybe largely are driven by the community, like, I don't know, repair centers or reuse center, whatever that is, that kind of gets folded into the sustainability and climate action plan? Or is everything that we're talking about here supposed to go into the solid waste update, 10-year update plan? Do you know what I mean?
And you're launching into our next discussion, which is outlined to the plan. So maybe given the time frame, and folks, please don't hold back. Go ahead and put your comments in the chat and we can go back to them. And we're always available to you guys. If you have more questions or if you want to have more discussion, we can always have an interim meeting or do some more of these deep dives. But I did want to go back to Amy and see if you're ready to share some recommended language to address some of the concerns that came up earlier. Oh, you're muted though.
Let me try to share screen and I'll show you what I did. Let me just find this document. I always do this. Share screen it just gives me too many options. Ruth, if you have it easily findable, why don't you do it? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, perfect. And then again, it's not slideshow. Okay, so what I did with the first one, and I know Jenny had some different wording here, but I changed the first one. So center environmental justice by investing in overburdened communities. And then if you scroll down, I added number 10, identify appropriate revenue sources to equitably fund programs and infrastructure. And Jenny has, Bonnie and Jenny, it looks like, have some comments on that. So Bonnie doesn't think that it's a guiding principle. And Jenny, it looks like, flip it around and it's less operational, more of a guiding principle, equitably fund programs and infrastructure. So yeah, we can do that. We can tweak it. So, but if the general idea is there, Chuck, you got your hand up?
Yes, I think for me, number 10, the issue is educating the public about the need for additional public investment. I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, it's just as we're educating people about the need for zero waste, we need to build support for the idea of public investment. I'm also reluctant to change number 1 as fully as you have. I mean, I'm comfortable adding the need to investment, but I wouldn't take out keeping the pollution out of.
Well, my thought was that number 2 really covered it, which is protect public health and the environment by reducing discharges to air, water, and land.
I think being really specific about the overburdened communities is important.
Okay.
Any other comments so far?
Joy has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I think is specific we can, because right now investing in overburdened communities doesn't say anything about waste.
Mm-hmm.
That I think it really needs to be talking specifically about that.
Okay. The intro to the guiding principles does talk about that. But if you think that we need to make it more clear in the numbered principles, we can do that. But, it's clear that these are the guiding principles for the zero waste plan.
If this is a guiding principle and the word investing, you're going to have a lot of communities that want to be an overburdened community. How do you define that?
Does the state have a definition of environmental justice? I know EPA does.
Yes, they do.
Yep.
So
well, do we want to continue to talk about this, or do folks want to, maybe we need a little subcommittee to help Amy kind of do some more wordsmithing?
Or just keep marking up the document, and maybe, we can give people till the end of the week, and I can, the end of the week's tomorrow, I can try to turn it around again and send it back out to you.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a long way, several months before this has to get adopted. I think we just need something that we feel really comfortable with, and get something into a draft form that folks can react to. Let's, because we're going to wind up in another 25 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and look at the outline. I'll go ahead and share my screen of kind of where we are. Melissa referred to this, which is what is in our plan. And the answer is it's in our plan if it's in the outline. And Anne will recognize this, which is the Delaware County 10-year Municipal Waste Management Plan outline includes all of the sections that are required by Act 101. So all of these sections and their little descriptors are really what is required under the guidance of DEP. And so this is kind of where we at in terms of what these are our marching orders of where we're going to have to make sure that we address in the update. A lot of the things will be the same from prior plans. A lot of the descriptions of, the situation. Of course, we have a new projection of how much trash we generate and, how the system works and, what the authority's role is pretty understood. And then a description of the facilities, very sort of similar. Estimate future capacity, we're working on that. We'll get some guidance from the authority as well on quantities and projections over the 10-year planning period. I mentioned that the state is doing a composition study, so we'll get updated information there. And then this number 4, description of recycling programs. And it was originally worded as to meet the state goal of 35% by 2003. Well, now we're in 2022. So what are our goals that might be over and above what the state of Pennsylvania has? Our goals are a sustainable, a sustainable system that invests in zero waste practices and follows the zero waste hierarchy. So that's kind of where we're heading. And we want to get as close to that as possible, diverting as much materials from destructive disposal as possible. So this number 4 is where we would get into the strategies and tactics for reaching the county's goals as defined in the guiding principles. In our early meeting, we talked about what are our goals. Are our goals 90%? Are our goals, absolute zero? In the time frame of the 10-year plan, we're not going to get to zero. So we're going to get to whatever is going to be the rate that we're going to be. We are showing you we're going to reduce waste by about half by in the next 10 years. That would be a laudable goal. That would be an aggressive goal to reduce your waste by half in the next 10 years. But that's one option. So that's so what we're developing with the zero waste initiatives is the based on conservative assumptions of what we can get in terms of capture rates and other things. How far down the road can we get towards a sustainable system? So that's number 4. And then number 5, selection and justification of a municipal waste management program. This is really around what are we going to do with our trash? And has been articulated by the advisory committee, the community, the county council, and the waste authority. We are in a transitionary period. And so we were going to further describe the plan, which the guidance so far is to phase out of incineration over time and invest in our local landfill capacity at Rolling Hills, and potentially look at other options such as the use of ferrous landfill or other alternative landfills in the short term. That's just for our residual waste. Number 5 is really about why, I mean, you know, that's for the leftovers, right? Number 4 is really about reducing the waste so that we have less to manage and in incinerators in the short term and in landfills in the long term. You know, we don't want to throw away a lot of stuff in landfills. We want to reduce our stuff first. So anyway, so that's what number 5 is about. The location is really about all the facilities that contribute to Delaware County's integrated system, and it includes all the transfer stations, hazardous waste facilities, material recovery facilities that are used by the municipalities and their contractors. We have a big long list. And then this number 7 is what we wanted to talk a little bit more about. We've had some discussion of it here and at previous meetings, but in the plan, we really want to articulate who is responsible. Melissa was saying, is this just the work plan for the authority? No, absolutely not. The authority has a role, but this is not the work plan of the authority. They have their own work plan. This plan can support and guide their work plan, but it's not their full responsibility to take care of everything with regards to materials management in the county. That's a shared responsibility. The nuance is, you know, we need to have the discussion, you know, what is the appropriate role for the county versus the authority versus the municipalities or other community partners. And I anticipate that what we will in the end recommend that it be a shared role. There may be clear defining lines, and this may be, you know, based on funding, based on, you know, other things of what is really appropriate for the authority versus the county. You know, the county is embarked on a sustainability plan. Waste reduction and zero waste is going to be a key part of sustainability in Delaware County. We want to reflect anything in this plan that the county will be taking the lead on. And just as, you know, the county obviously has a role in getting people out of their cars and switching their energy to sustainable sources of energy and energy efficiency, we would expect that there could be a role for the county in supporting some of the zero waste initiatives, particularly maybe on the outreach, education, technical assistance, culture change side, right? So if we're going to be sustainable in other areas of the county, you know, other subject areas, you know, waste reduction, zero waste may be a part of that as well. So that partnership between the county and the authority could be articulated here in number 7, and it could also identify opportunities for the municipalities to both support the vision by changing their methods of collection and procuring of services and provision of services, but also collaborating with each other and with the county and the authority on an integrated countywide approach, which would be optimal in achieving those waste reduction goals. Number 8 is the public function and justification and mechanisms of implementation of public ownership. This is about why we in Delaware County want to invest in public ownership of facilities, particularly the transfer stations and the landfill. And then number 5, copies of ordinance and resolution, and then orderly extension. This is really about where we have the opportunity to say how the 10-year municipal waste management plan update is married to the countywide sustainability plan, in that a big function of that vision for sustainability will be through this plan. They might mirror each other. There might be things that the sustainability plan goes above and beyond, but it's anticipated, and that's why so many of you who are on this Sustainability Commission are here, is that they are co-developed. And then last few things, methods of disposal other than by contracts. You know, this is the, you know, in some areas of the county, there are subscription-based programs. Some of the commercial entities are less regulated than elsewhere. So there's a discussion of this. Non-interference, a discussion how the county's plan will not interfere with existing facilities. This is, you know, kind of a non-compete opportunity, I guess. So we will want to be careful about how we discuss entering into compost development infrastructure or MRF material recovery facility development. We would want to do that in cooperation with existing, farm-based programs or others. And then we would talk about our public participation process that we all have gone through the last few months, including the listening sessions, public workshops, and public hearings, and any other information. So that is the outline. And what we were really hoping to get in the next 15 minutes was a little bit more discussion from you all about number 4, which we've kind of covered, and we'll come back with some more discussion of implementation steps. But then number 7, if you have any guidance for us about how you would like us to articulate that transition, because ultimately the county council and the municipalities are partners with the authority. And even though the authority is an independent entity, it really should reflect the desires and goals of the county. And so articulating what that future transition looks like should be a discussion here. And then the implementation entity would welcome more thoughts about particularly what resonates with you about the county role, the authority role, the municipal role, and the community partner role. I'm going to stop share right now. And it looks like there's been some discussion in the chat. Anybody want to, oh, Joy, you want to shout out and start?
So I'm naive about the waste authority. Is there, other people may not be here. So is there a place where I can learn what role the authority has in this structure before we even start commenting on it?
Well, we've presented on the, in fact, is it on this outline, the system, municipal system summary? Should we share that for a minute? No, that's not it. Essentially, we have a good understanding about what everyone's current role is. And I'll just state it in a nutshell, and then Jim can correct me. But essentially, it's been the authority's role to run the transfer station and manage the contracts with Covanta and with Waste Management. Waste Management operates the transfer station and does some of the hauling to Covanta and to its own landfill, the Fairless landfill. And the authority also operates the county-owned landfill. So these assets, the transfer station, publicly owned transfer stations, and the landfill, are publicly owned. And then it's been the authority's role to manage that program and manage the contracts for transfer and hauling. Is that in a nutshell, Jim?
Yeah, that's correct. The authority owns, just to clear up, the authority owns the landfill, not the county. We also operate it. We own the transfer stations. We run the scale houses at all of them. We collect all the revenue, and we pay Waste Management on a per ton basis, depending on where the waste goes. Correct.
Joy, does that answer the question? I think the other significant thing to know is that the authority also has the staffing position of the county recycling coordinator. We've worked with the county recycling coordinator to get some data. The coordinator does the municipal survey. That's an opportunity, I think, for that role to expand. In some counties that really that functions more as the technical assistance outreach education role. So there's an opportunity there, even within the staffing of the authority now. But obviously we think there's a need for more robust investment in outreach and education. Melissa, did you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. Is it the expectation that we have to think about budgets for the zero waste initiatives in order to, assess how they fit into the plan, like without knowing anticipated costs? Is that, or not, let me put it this way, is not knowing anticipated costs a barrier to really understanding how they fit into the plan and who's responsible for them?
So yeah, absolutely. So we'll be coming back with each of the initiatives with planning level cost estimate. And when I say planning level, it means that it's what, you know, the county or the authority or municipality would do if they were going to go about doing this. They would have to budget in their municipal budget or in the county budget or in the authority budget. And this is kind of the elements that would include. So it would be, you know, staff time, you know, any collateral, any infrastructure, you know, bins and equipment, you know, if we're going to do technical assistance in the schools, what does that look like, right? So yeah, we would come back with a planning level cost estimates for each of the initiatives. And then in terms of selection of sources of funding, we'll be identifying sources of funding. There are huge opportunities for state and federal grants. Not all of the municipalities in the county take advantage of all the state grants that are available. We would want to max those out, right? You know, we would want all the municipalities to max out on all of the grants that are available from the state. And then also the federal government. There's a lot of investment right now in infrastructure from the federal government. In order to get that funding, you have to be somewhat shovel ready. So the authority is doing some initial planning on the revamp of its transfer station. Maybe there's an opportunity there to say, can we see what it might look like to do some organics processing or other things? And maybe there might be federal funding for some of that infrastructure. Similarly, there's private and public grants available for some things like bins and equipment. You know, there will be entities that will buy bins on behalf of municipalities or supply those. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. So the answer is that we will identify, the plan won't make all the decisions, but it will outline the cost structure and the potential funding sources. And then it will be the responsibility for the county council and municipalities and the authority to say, yeah, we want to go for it, and we'll start. But it's a 10-year plan. So, you know, it's not going to be definitive of we're not going to have every eventuality. Okay, Chuck.
I just want to add a note to the relationship between the county and the Solid Waste Authority. The county has considerable authority over the Solid Waste Authority and can provide direction. The Solid Waste Authority is required to submit its budget to the county for approval. The county appoints the members of the board of directors. It would be a 10-year plan approved by the county could certainly include direction from the county to the Solid Waste Authority. That's both embedded in municipal law and in the existing contractual relationships between the two. The second thing is that what we just looked at kind of contemplated a 10-year boundary to the work, and I feel like the plan should be taking into account a view that's longer than 10 years, even though it is a 10-year plan. And I think that embedded in the, so that the plan should certainly have a vision for what happens for something that's for longer period than 10 years. And secondly, there should be a kind of a trigger at year 8 or whatever to start a real process for the next 10-year plan. That should be, I think that should be part of it. I mean, I think it said in there that the 10-year plan's responsibility is to make sure there's a place for waste for 10 years. And I don't think we want to be at the end of 10 years with no place, with no future beyond that.
That's good guidance. A lot of folks have not piped up yet today. Either they're relaxed and feel very happy and confident in the direction that we're going, or are acting a little shy. So wanted to give a little space for folks who have not had a chance to weigh in yet. Any observations either on the outline, on the discussion that we've had so far? What do you guys think? How are we doing? We have shy people, and then we have less shy people. And if, you shy people don't speak up, then the less shy people, we'll give them the floor. And there's been a lot of discussion in the chat. So those of you who've been chatting, if there are any things relating to the current discussion on implementation, the 10-year strategy, Chuck's idea of post 10 years, what does that look like? Would love to hear from you all on that. Joy?
I'm one of the less shy people, I guess. I really think the county should be the leading role, have the leading role in developing a place for food waste. I mean, we only have 2 places in Greater Philadelphia that will take food waste commercially, and I know the commercial people who are picking up are constantly trying to get farms and different things to do this, but I don't think they've had any luck. So I think working at the county level to be able to do that, especially if there's the county has a place to do it, because individual municipalities just don't have that capability.
Yeah, good point. Jim M.
I just wanted to reiterate a comment that I made in the chat that the planning documents, the descriptive documents for each of the initiatives that Ruth and the team are putting together are extremely helpful. I think they outline not only what needs to happen, but they start to get at how are these going to be resourced, or at least they should. I mean, at some point, each one of these things will be resourced in some way, even if it's just a public statement or a policy that gets passed. But the actual getting into the actual implementation comes through those documents, and I'm going to be looking very much to what comes in there, the best recommendations on how they work, and a lot of this is already there. I mean, how this worked in other communities and how it can work well in our community. That is where the rubber will meet the road on all of these great initiatives. How to get them to happen will be done through a detailed plan like that. And I think that folks, if they haven't had a chance to review those different documents, it's well worth your time to do so. Because I think there's a lot of knowledge there. I think there's a lot of, we're going to have to figure out how to make this work for Delco. I want these plans to work for all 49 municipalities, and they have to. They really do. And we won't be successful unless we get an overwhelming majority of our municipalities participating in the programs. So I encourage folks to read these documents.
I wanted to share with regards to the funding discussion, something that I just did a screenshot of. I'm working on a project in Richmond, California, which if you folks know Richmond, it is a, under-resourced town. And it's also an environmental justice community because it's home to the refineries, the Chevron refineries there. And we're doing a project on green jobs, identifying transition, an opportunity to transition from fossil fuel related jobs to the future jobs, which we want to see as green jobs. The point of this slide is I just wanted to show you the potential funding opportunities that are out there for good things like green jobs and the spectrum of returns. So there's on the right-hand side, you see competitive returns, right? Competitive returns are things that people are willing to invest in because they're going to get a return on their investment. Waste Management, Republic, folks locally invest in recycling, organics, collection systems because there is a return on the investment. So there's private finance for some projects, right? So some projects will be privately financed because there's going to be a competitive return on investment, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's public financing, through federal, state, regional, municipal public financing, because there are some things that are not going to get a competitive return on investment. And those are things that we need to invest in as a community. They require a subsidy. And then in the middle, there are things that are in philanthropy. And I heard a term that I was just so interested to hear, and I can never remember what it is. But essentially, it's about the compensatory returns, something like that. And essentially what it means is that the philanthropic organizations give about required by law to give away 5% of their assets every year, but the 95% can be invested in anything. And they can take a smaller return on investment for the 95% of their assets by investing in things that they think are really cool. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that sort of range of funding opportunities for things that we want to do, like good green jobs or zero waste. Okay, so other folks have comments? Oh, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we got to go. But I did want to just to say one thing about our next workshop, which is scheduled for the end of the month, June 30th. And we had a listening session in Chester, and then we had some offline discussion with some of the representatives here from Chester, that rather than having our last workshop in our last public workshop, we will also have public hearings in Ridley. We might want to move that to Chester. And I wanted to see if anybody here would have any feel a hardship about that, or if you feel that would be okay for us to have our public workshop on June 30th in Chester. We'd of course want to make sure that the Ridley folks knew how to get to Chester and or knew how to log in at the Ridley Library if somebody showed up. So anybody have any concern about having that last workshop in Chester? Okay, well, we got an exciting lineup. You know, we have solicited the participation of a really great public speaker from Baltimore, who manages the Baltimore Compost Collective. Marvin Hayes has tentatively agreed to come and kind of give us some inspiration about how his program has really changed lives and residents of people and given them a vision of zero waste. So it's kind of an exciting opportunity. At this workshop, we'll be going over what we talked about today, going through the elements of the plan, having a longer discussion with folks about those implementation strategies. We'll share more information about each of the initiatives and some of those elements on the plan outline that we've been discussing. So that's the plan for next. And then in terms of our next meeting is really scheduled for the 2nd of August. Wait, is it August 4th? Is that right? Is that right, Alex? Is it scheduled for August 4th? I believe it's that first meeting in August. Anyway, there will be an opportunity for us to check in between now and August, both at the workshop and afterwards. So we'll kind of poll the group and see if we want to schedule an early July meeting. Right now, it's not scheduled to have an advisory committee meeting in July because we're supposed to be doing work behind the scenes so that we can have a robust discussion in August. The idea would be in mid-July, we would send you a draft of our plan, and then we would have a robust discussion at that first meeting in August. So Joan, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm sad to hear that there will be an amazing man who will be on Zoom and not one that will be at the in-person. So how's that going to work?
No, because Marvin will be in person. Marvin will be in person.
Oh, okay. So then the Zoom people will miss him.
Well, everybody's invited to go to the, we're going to try, Tom is helping us identify a site.
That's great.
We'll try and get a biggest site as possible so more people can go and be at the in-person workshop. That would be the plan.
So Amy was asking if it could also be on Zoom. I don't know who would handle that technology, but if there's someone that is able to make that possible, that would be great.
Yeah, well, we can look into that. No problem. So we can definitely broadcast from the site probably. I don't know if we can have an interactive Zoom conversation, but we can certainly broadcast. So we'll work on that. Sean is here. He's brilliant. He'll probably help us figure that out. But anyway, let's see if there are any other capping comments or questions for now, because we're a little over time. Okay, so please do comment on any of those documents. I sent a link to the drive that we have for all of our documents. If there's anything there that you want to make a comment on, please do it in suggestion mode. That way we can see that you've made a change or you have a question. And then we will try and answer that. We'll lean on you guys to help get the word out for attendance at that Chester workshop, which will also be on Zoom. And then we'll do the best we can to accommodate as many people as possible at that site. Okay. All right. We'll see you guys soon.